alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hello and welcome to this week's Open Dialogue. Inshallah, you are all well this Tuesday night and you are in the best of health and best of Iman. Thank you so much for joining us for today's program. Today, as you can see on your screens, the topic is modesty. Is modesty a relevant concept in today's time and age in the modern world? What constitutes modesty? And is modesty just a religious concept or is it a logical social concept as well? What would society look like without modest behavior and modest dress? To discuss these questions and more, we are joined by our respected guests. We have with us Sister Fatima Dossa, who is a clinical pharmacist and a Muslim activist. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Fatima.
Walaikum salam, Zainab, my viewers, and Maulana.
Thank you for joining us and accepting our invitation today. It's an honor to host you. We are also joined by Hujjatul Islam wal Muslimin, Syed Mohammad Razavi, who is the head of the Religious Advisory Board at the Shia Islamic Education Society in London. Syed Mohammad Razavi has over 40 years of experience in dealing with social and domestic issues for clients from worldwide. And he tries to reach a resolution for his clients based on the Islamic law. Assalamu alaikum, Syed.
Wa alaikum assalam. Thank you for hosting.
Syed, we have had a break from the program for 2 months now due to Ayyam al-Aza. How were your Ayyam al-Aza?
Alhamdulillah, busy. I went abroad. I went to Colombia and Ecuador and had a good experience meeting with the community and people there.
Alhamdulillah. Sister Fatima, before we go into the topic, you are a Muslim activist. I'm just curious if you would explain to us your activities in the social and in the activism area. Which organizations have you been involved with, and what exactly do you do?
Thank you, Zainab, for the opportunity. Professionally, as you introduced me, I'm a clinical pharmacist. I've been in this country now for about 26 years, and about 2 to 3 years having arrived in this country, I came across a very good organization called Islamic Unity Society, who we were in university at that time, and we were actively doing programs, whether it was conferences, and just introducing the concept of Islam and Shia Islam and the importance of the Ahlebait, and catering for Shia students, as well as at that time, opening the doors of the Ahlebait to the Sunni community, who a lot of the times had a lot of misconceptions. So part of that, I then joined other organizations. This was New Trust. We were doing similar things as we were doing with the Islamic Unity Society. And I also, because, from that, it led to a lot of other things. I was very passionate about the issue of Palestine and Israel. So I joined Islamic Human Rights, who I continue to volunteer with, where I can, when I can, take an active interest in their work. And I also then had the opportunity to volunteer with Muslim News. As you work with different organizations, doors open for you. So I worked with the Sunni community in the MCB, and I then went on to become one of the youth leaders of the Council of European Jamaat youth section. At present, I, with another brother called Dr. Shihabi, organize political discussions in the city of London. And they're not only political, they're political, social, geographical issues that affect Muslims locally and globally. And for example, the last one we talked about the role of women in modern societies vis-a-vis the challenges that we face. On one hand, we have stereotypical issues that the Western world throws at us, and on the other hand, we have religious, cultural issues. So how do we balance those two and move forward? So this is some of the work that I'm doing.
you're also involved with the Abrar Islamic Foundation, correct? And what is it exactly do you organize through that?
So the Abrar Islamic Foundation is this discussions that we do. So it's a collaboration between the Abrar House, which is run by Dr. Shihabi, and Open Discussions, which is an organization I set up when I was in university because I felt that there was a lot of misunderstanding about Muslims. And the discussions are attended by an eclectic crowd. We have Muslims, non-Muslims, who've been attending for the last 15 to 20 years. And once the discussion is over, we will sit together and have a meal and participate in Ramadan and in the iftar and even during Muharram. So we have regular non-Muslims and Sunnis coming in to our programs.
That's amazing. I don't know how you find time with your full-time work and your family and also all these activities. How do you do it, Sister Fatima?
Alhamdulillah, I think, when God gives you the strength, it's all possible. It's just making sure that you use your time effectively. Time is money, as I say.
Certainly. Of course, the viewers at home can reach out to these activities and find out more about the work that Abrar Islamic Foundation does on www.abraronline.net. Abrar, A-B-R-A-R, correct?
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. And all our programs are recorded and they're transcribed. You'll get all of this on the website.
That's perfect. I think we should start the discussion today. And Maulana, I'll pose the first question to you. I think we need to first, before we dive into understanding modesty and whether it's a religious concept or just a concept that's a social concept and a logical concept in society, if you can explain to us what actually deen is. When we talk about a deen al-Islami, usually in English it gets translated as the religion of Islam. But deen as a word is far more deeper than the word religion in English. If you could first explain to us what is a deen al-Islam.
Well, Deen has more connection to human nature, and the connection with the human nature is not acknowledged by the materialistic ideologies or ideologies who do not have any divine connection. So if you have a divine connection, then you accept the nature of human beings, and you accept that there is a deity who created us and gave us a nature, and that nature is what we are supposed to follow. You must have heard people saying that, oh, I religiously eat that, or I religiously do that exercise, or I religiously do this and that. That does not show deen. That does not show iman. That does not show faith. That only shows habits or some kind of addictions or strict regime that you have adopted in your life. You might even find some people who very religiously pray their 5 times daily prayers and fast and observe hijab and do everything, but because they are doing that in that manner, as soon as they are put in a situation where they have to break the rules and maybe oppress someone or hurt or harm someone, they would immediately and very quickly do that. And you could find the examples of that with Imam Hussain. I mean, those people who killed Imam Hussain, alayhi salatu wasalam, they were Huffaz Quran, reciters of Quran. They didn't used to miss their prayers. They were very strictly following that regime.
So in other words, you're saying that Deen goes far beyond just a set of beliefs and ritualistic worships. It's actually an all-encompassing system of life that's been given to us by God. So in that, then, uh, is modesty also a religious concept? And what encompasses modesty? What comes under the banner of modesty in this system of belief, in this way of life?
I would say that even if you do not believe in God, or even if you do not believe in any religion and you want to live in this world as a social being, one of the most essential requirements of living as a social being is to have certain rules and regulations and moral values that you have to respect. And without respecting those moral values, you would not be able to establish a society. One of the most essential rules for establishing a society is to have code of conduct or code of moral values should be there. I mean, forget any religion. Just you have to look what is right and what is wrong with a very unbiased mind. You would reach to that conclusion, and that is fitra. That is the nature of human being. If you think, I mean, and that's what Islam teaches us, that when we are educating and upbringing and nurturing our children, we should educate them to think about the world and their own creation uh, from a very unbiased mind. And they just have to, you have to encourage them to give importance to the moral values, and that will itself automatically lead them into recognition of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and deen, and they will start following the path that they are supposed to follow.
Sure. Sister Fatima, what's your thoughts on what Maulana said is about modesty, the code of conduct that's in line with the human nature, with the fitrah that's been God given to us? What are your thoughts about this?
So I think the Maulana has summed it up really well. As Muslims, we understand that although our feet are grounded on earth, our vision is on the hereafter, and our moral values are not dictated by human beings and the whims and fancies of human beings, which change as we can see as the years and the centuries have gone. Our rules and our, God has created us. He understands, our inner nature. He understands. He wants the best for us, and He wants for us to achieve our potentiality. This is the reason that we are here, and that is
Right,
what a lot of Quranic verses will talk about. And for that to be achieved, then there is a hierarchy of how the world and how the reality as we see it works. And for that reality to work harmoniously, you know, each one of us has to play their own part. And for society to work, it's not about the individualistic, which is what we see in the Western world, but it is about the whole working together. And hijab is one of the aspects, and that hijab is seen only for women, but actually is the harmonious nature of the man and the woman uh, working together in a modest way to achieve what is best for society as a whole, and to bring
right.
up the future generation, and to achieve what is God's plan for us in this world. And by doing that, we achieve the hereafter.
Thank you. I mean, Maulana's sister Fatima just mentioned the word hijab, which has been for the past few weeks or so getting very negative coverage in media across the world, and there have been protests. But before we go into the reasons of that and what has been happening on the global scale, Is hijab fard in Islam? Is it something compulsory that's been ordered by God? And is it in the Holy Quran? What is the ruling of hijab in the deen of Islam?
Yes, I mean, there are very clear verses of Holy Quran in which this has been discussed, and the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala very beautifully discusses modesty. Let's discuss about modesty. And then introduces hijab is excellent. I mean, it could be only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is the creator, who knows our nature and fitra, could define it in that way. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first addresses men that they should lower their gaze. So if there is any rule and regulation, it is addressed to the men. That they should learn how to control their behavior, their looks, and their gazes, and they are the ones who are supposed to be modest in their behavior, in their approach, in their looks and gazes towards not only opposite sex, to anyone, because hijab is also towards same sex as well. I mean,
Right.
it's very clearly described in Islam that a man cannot look at another man with that kind of gaze and look. He has to be modest. And a female also cannot look at another female with that kind of gaze and look. So she has to also control. So modesty is introduced in both sexes towards each other and towards the same sex and towards all members of the society, whoever they may be and however they may identify themselves. Nowadays, we have a lot of this kind of discussion in our society. So, whoever they may identify themselves as, Islam teaches us to be modest with everyone. Be modest, and even within the circle of close relatives and those we call them as mahram, there are rules and regulations. Rule of modesty is not neglected even between the maharim, those who are mahram. So the principles are all there. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first introduces modesty as a principle, then acknowledges that female is an attractive creation of God, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is beautiful, and He likes beautiful, and He has created the female as an attractive creation, and therefore it is the responsibility and duty of those who are of that gender, I mean female, to safeguard what they have and be proud of what they have, and not to put it on display for anyone. There should be rules and regulations, and one of the most important principle is modesty. In displaying their beauty, they should be modest. And hijab does not mean a certain kind of dress. Hijab means cover. I mean, anything that can cover and does not incite corruption in the society is considered as hijab.
So it's quite important. You talked about the modesty of action and modesty of thought that's been ordained by Allah for both sexes, male and female. However, then you said that the veil has been made obligatory upon the females. Now, Sister Fatima, isn't covering up the female in today's day and age is an infringement of the female's freedom and holds her back in this modern age from being an active participant of society and who can achieve her full potential? How can she do that while she's veiled? and she has these restrictions of dress.
So Zainab, I will throw the question in a different way. So the view that you've given me is that of the Western world. If we look at the statistics, right? So, what has been happening in the world around in Iran. So let's look at the statistics in Iran. So before the revolution and after the revolution, 97% of Muslim women in Iran are now literate. One of the highest countries of women education. Active members of the society. And whilst I will ask your permission to read this, these are women, Iranian women, living in the Western world who didn't really support the revolution, but look at what they are saying about what women achieved after the revolution. So I will read you a few. One is by a woman called Hale Ashfar. She unfortunately passed away in May 2022, but she was a baroness and she's born in Tehran. And she says, the revival of Islam after the victory of the Islamic Revolution has been almost literally God sent in the contest for which Iranian women have fought against the political, legal, and economic marginalization that was there during the Shah time.
Right.
And they've gone to achieve, higher education and higher rights. I then read to you a woman called Ziba Mir Husseini. She's a legal anthropologist in Suez. And this is what she writes. I argue that contrary to what early literature contends, what remains implicit in the later wave, the impact of the revolution on women has been emancipatory in the sense that it has paved the way for the emergence of a popular feminist consciousness. The last one that I read, again by a woman who was anti-revolution. The process, what she means is by the Islamic Revolution has inevitably been nurturing an indigenous feminism, which is as much rooted in Iranian family structures as it is in the interaction of Islamic and Western ideals of womanhood. It could emerge only after challenging and rejecting the state-sponsored, Western-inspired feminism of the Pahlavis. Now, the reason I present this to you is that we, as Muslim women, know, the women that wear, know that actually it is liberating. I used to work in Boots, and part of Boots, there are a lot of women who work in the makeup counter. And I would go and talk to them as a pharmacist, and they would look at me and say, "Oh, you're so lucky. You can wake up in the morning. You don't have to worry about your makeup. You don't have to worry about your hair. You can just come in. We're spending 30, 40 minutes of our life doing our makeup in the car, because if we don't appear in this way, whether we like it, want it, feel like it, we have to appear like this, because otherwise we do not achieve, we cannot get a job, and we cannot be accepted within the wider society. For Muslim women, we know that the hijab allows us that safety and that freedom to work in the public sphere with a clear boundary, to say, you know what, we are not here to be treated as sexual object. So actually the veil is liberating. The hijab is liberating. And it is a statistic how many non-Muslim women have converted and accepted. So we asked ourselves, why have they spat in that Western liberalism and come to Islam and don the veil, because they know that actually it achieves it gives them that liberty physically, and spiritually it elevates them.
Sure, fantastic. That's a very enlightening answer, I think. Syed, the sister mentioned the 1979 Islamic Revolution. and the freedom of women. And I was just curious. I mean, you had lived that time and era. We were just born around that time. But you, as somebody who lived that time and lived the time of the Pahlavi Shah, who was a Western regime connected to the West and the Western ideas. What was the freedom of women like under the Shah and under that regime?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't call freedom. I mean, as Sister was mentioning, that after 40 years of revolution, what we see is the growth of women in different fields of life. I mean, there are professors, the amount of professors in university that we have now didn't exist. The amount of pilots
Iran.
and even in Iran, they didn't exist. Pilots and people on high positions and members of parliament and heads of companies and in scientific fields, they are everywhere now, and they are quite happy and proud to be working in that kind of environment. Of course, there are always unsatisfied people, even in this society that we live. You can find so many people who are not satisfied, but rules and regulations are not made by those minorities. Rules and regulations are made according to the human nature and the requirement and the majority of those who live in that environment, and that is called democracy. So if that part of the world majority is happy and feeling uh, happy to follow those rules and regulations, who are we to try to change them? Unfortunately, the Western media has been really working hard because they have identified the reason of the success of Islam around the world is modesty and its principles. So one of the ways to undermine the growth of Islam is undermine modesty. So if you can do that, you have broken through. So that's what, unfortunately, they have been doing.
I mean, as a code of conduct that the Syed just mentioned, Sister Fatima, modest behavior and modest dress actually provides women an extra safety net, like you also mentioned. And as we know, the statistics are very high around the world, with especially in countries like India, also where women are raped. There is a huge amount of molestation that takes place, harassment that takes place. I mean, it's a logical concept that should be endorsed, shouldn't it? To have modesty in thought and modesty in behavior and modesty in dress, which provides extra safety that allows the women then to become uh, proper and active members of the society without having the fear of being molested or being harassed for their looks or for their beauty and things like that. What are your thoughts?
I absolutely agree. I mean, if we look at the Western liberal world, and the position of women, I mean, recently we've seen the murders of Sarah Avrad. We've seen the murder of Shabirun Nessa, I think it was, and these were murders by what we would call respected members of the society. Uh, and this is the 21st century. We can see that women don't feel safe in this society. So, in the absolute epitome of Western democracy, if women do not feel safe and cannot walk down the street, uh, forget during the night, but even during the day, without the fear of being sexually molested. We also look at, I hate to mention the porn industry. There's a huge growth of the porn industry, and that sees women as nothing but sexual objects. We also see that the Western world claim give women democracy and freedom, yet in the 21st century, they have brought the women out into the workplace, but they don't even pay women the same amount that they do to. So, the Western world will throw stones at the Islamic world and talk about the equality of women and the treatment of women. I would say, and let us as Muslims reclaim the narrative and challenge them on what they are telling us about about the Islamic laws. And if we look at the Western society as a whole, it is in crisis. The modern world and the postmodern Western world is in crisis in every part of the society because they have chosen to go against divine laws. We talk about the hijab. You mentioned logic. Absolutely. If you look at the history of women in any culture, whether it was Victorian times, whether it was the Muslim, the Christian nuns, whether we see Jewish women, whether we see women as a whole historically, they were always covered. And women have maintained the covering, and which is what really is a thorn in the Western world. And the first thing that you will notice that when they democratize and impose their culture on Muslim world, the first thing they will do is dewail that woman, because they know by bewailing the woman, society will go to the place they wanted. Demoralization, total breakdown, and crisis, because the women are essentially homemakers. They are they are the center of family life and bringing up children. So you corrupt women by derailing, and consequently the domino effect that we see, the generation and the society that follows will go down that route. And equally, if we look at the transformation of society in a better way, whether it was during the time of Prophet Muhammad or whether we look at Islamic revolution, by putting the hijab back on women and by giving women the moral and the dignified respect that Islam gives us, you transform the whole of society by that one little action. So it has a huge impact on society as a whole.
So your view is that hijab actually empowers women rather than take away their powers and take away their role. The sister talked about the changing role of women in the Western society, in the liberal Western societies. Syed, what is your view regarding this equality that's being preached in these societies? Is it something attainable? And what is your view regarding the role of women as per Islamic viewpoint?
Equality does not mean that women should do everything that men do and men should do everything that women do. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created both of us differently and for different reasons. Even in this modern world, if you look at some of the games, for example, tennis, men play 5 sets and ladies only play 3 sets. Why? Because although there is a bit of argument and discussion going on to make it equal for the ladies, but it will make the ladies suffer. And same thing with other rules and regulations. But where they need to be just, they are not just. They don't treat them equally. For example, if there is an intellectual, intelligent woman who can be head of a company or could be the professor and lecturer, she should be given equal wages and equal treatment. But unfortunately, even in this 21st century Western society, they are not given their rights equally. But if you look at Islam and Islamic teachings, women have all the rights. Of course, I mean, there are some places where the role is not given to them, and there is a reason for that. In Islam, a woman A lady can become a judge, she can become a head of a company, she can take part in elections, she can vote, she can own the property. This is all what did not exist. Even in Europe, when Islam came, these rights did not exist for women. And Islam was far ahead of Europe and Western society and gave these rights to women. And that is the reason why majority of those who are embracing Islam are women, and majority of those women who are embracing Islam are intellectual and graduate women who are embracing Islam. And that is that is very obvious proof that Islam is growing fast and attracting women by protecting their rights.
Carrying on from your point, Syed, Sister Fatima, is there a disconnect then between the Muslim woman and her understanding of the hijab? Because we saw this movement in the past couple of years of Muslim influencers, hijabis taking off their hijabs online, and that trend became so popular that today we have many who have taken off their hijab. So what has happened there? What is the disconnect between the understanding of the youth in the West and the concept of hijab or appreciating what they have?
So I agree. I have a young daughter who is 12, 13, and growing up in the Western society, and I also have a lot of nieces who are growing up in the Western society, and there's a constant struggle, justifying the hijab from a Western liberal thought. And also, sometimes, as the Maulana explained, hijab is not just a covering on the head. There is more to it. And as the years have gone by, to adapt and to assimilate within the Western society, we have reduced hijab to not only, a cloth, but reduced hijab to now just a piece of scarf on our head, with everything else, with full makeup, false eyelashes, tight clothes, the mannerism and things that go with it. And also we fall into the trap of constantly justifying Islamic, whether it's hijab or whether it's the role of women in Islam, to the Western world by reducing it. And I say, let's reject this, absolute nonsense. What I tell my nieces and what I tell my daughter, don't be affected by these distractions and by these noises. Just look at the crisis of the Western world. I'm a health professional. I see girls as young as 12 asking me, and I hate to say it in such programs, but for the morning after pill. Whether, as the Maulana said, my daughter is in year 8, and they don't even know what they're identifying as. So in the 21st century, a woman and a man do not know what they're identifying as. This is the height of the intellectual revolution of the Western world. So we need to understand and need to look at our Islamic society vis-a-vis the Western society, which the famous French philosopher by the name of René Guénon, and he's written, this was a while back, a good few years back, where he's written The Crisis of the Modern World, where he says the modern world, by abandoning what God has wanted and by looking at knowledge superficially without the pursuit of the absolute truth, has reduced itself and has hurled itself into absolute chaos and crisis. The problem with the Muslim world is that we want to get on this train which is hurling towards destruction. And we need to understand this as that our laws, and whether it's the hijab as modesty, or whether it's the wider social norms and regulations that we see, from prayers to fasting to hijab, are rooted in the metaphysics. Hijab is not only seen that it is a veil to protect against the gazes of men and to protect society. There is a spiritual nature of every ritual that we see, some that we know and some that we don't. And we submit, as Muslims, we submit to the will of God and say, you are our creator, you take us to the path of success. Like I said before, we our feet are grounded on this earth, but our vision is to the hereafter. And we need to teach our children that. And we need to make sure our institutions are challenging this Western notion, because you cannot understand the divine and the Islamic laws by mere your Western laws. The alien. You just cannot bring those two systems together. We have to ignore them and we move forward.
I think that's a very important point you made there regarding the spiritual connections of the physical hijab. That's something that we have to really contemplate upon, is that even though the hijab is just a physical covering, but what are the spiritual consequences and spiritual effects of this garment or this cover or this acts of behavior or modest behavior? Sayed, why is something so logical then receiving such negative coverage in the media, especially in the past 2 weeks? What has been happening on the world stage? If you could explain that to us in your view. And I'd like to remind the viewers that all views expressed in this program are of the person speaking to them and do not reflect the views of the channel. So Maulana, back to you. What has been happening on the world stage and why is hijab receiving such negative coverage?
Well, as I mentioned before, uh, the enemies of modesty have recognized that this is the best uh, tool that is propagating Islam and promoting Islam and giving the message of Islam. And I have many times said our women and ladies who go out with hijab are the best muballighs. I mean, they are the best preachers. When they go out, they reflect. Us men could go out and be mixed in the society very easily. Nobody would recognize whether we are Muslim or not. But our ladies are the flag bearers of Islam, and that's what they are targeting. They want to target that, and basically they're not targeting that. They're targeting the message of modesty, in which I have Christian and Jewish friends who agree with me that their religion has been undermined, their faith has been undermined by targeting the modest values that divine prophets brought to this world. And so we are, first they targeted Christianity and Judaism, now they're targeting Islam. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised in Quran that with these verbal propaganda, they will not be able to put the light of knowledge and Islam off. Inshallah, Islam will grow and is growing, and it has become the fastest growing religion in the world. Vatican has officially acknowledged that Islam is now the fastest growing religion, and this is in spite of all that negative propaganda against Islam. Islam is still growing. There is not a single month I personally don't have some new sister embracing Islam, and most of them are highly educated, graduate university graduate ladies who love to become Muslim and love to wear hijab.
I think you have mentioned something that is worth thinking about, is that a Muslim woman actually in her hijab is a visible ambassador of the faith, and you cannot, a man can't be identified. You could look like somebody from any other faith, but a woman that's in hijab is actually very visible, and she is displaying her love and her adherence to the values of Islam and her connection to God. We are fast approaching the end of the program now. So, Sister Fatima, what would be your advice to the youth today who are not wearing the hijab, or who are influenced by the liberal Western ideas, or who would like to wear the hijab, or who would like to improve their hijab? What is your advice to the youth, or
I
to
would
women in general?
always, to women in general, for those, to the young sisters, what I would say is see past the superficiality of the Western world. Open your eyes and look at look at the Me Too campaign. Look at the statistics of the Western world when it comes to women, and also embark once you embark on the path of God. And a lot of women will say, I will only wear the hijab once I understand it. And I say, look, get onto the path, because the knowledge and the marifah will only come once you're on the path. You can't go to a path of disobedience to God and expect to understand it when you are disobeying the will of God. So once you get onto the path, the understanding and the love of hijab and what it will do for you will automatically come. Trust God, He's our creator, and He will only do what is best for us. Don't trust the whims and the fancies of the Western world.
Thank you. That's a very kind, nice message that you have given there. Syed, what are your concluding thoughts regarding modesty and regarding hijab practice? And nowadays, it's not just the problem in the Western world, but people globally are affected by the liberal Western ideas because of the reach of the media and because of the entertainment industry. So, what are your concluding thoughts regarding this topic?
I would say that since we know that women are, especially those women who wear hijab and go out and take part in the society, are the ambassadors of Islam, the men have greater responsibility to behave modestly and behave properly, and they have a bigger responsibility to protect these women and be available there for them to defend their right of freedom and their choice. Their choice is to wear hijab, and we should be there. If we are legal experts, we should go forward and provide assistance and help for them. And if we are experts in any other way, we can go forward and support them so they can continue on the right path.
Very. So basically, any person who is asking women to undress, people should actually be wary of the reasons for doing that, and should be wise as to why they are being asked to lessen their observance of their code of conduct or their dress. With this, we have come to the end of the program. I'd like to thank both the guests, the Honorable Syed and Sister Fatima Dossa, for being with us today. I hope, dear viewers, you have also benefited from the discussion today.